we're going to talk about security and layers. So it isn't just one thing, it's a combination of a whole bunch of small and some big, but a whole bunch of things that encompass security. So, yeah, my name is Leslie. I'm the owner of Digital Fire. We are an outsourced IT company for many of you on this call. And yeah, also like airport, I'm actually traveling tomorrow to Newfoundland, so airports have many layers of security, and we think of, okay, the actual metal detectors and security, TFSA checks and what, but they're built from the planes sort of outwards in this semicircular fashion, right from the parking lot to the drop-off area to so there's all these layers before you actually get to being on a plane. Defense in depth is another fancy way of saying this. And then there's 7 official layers of security. So we'll go over some of those. So in case you haven't noticed, it's been in the news a lot. Security is a really big deal. There's lots of hacking going on, and they make money at it. And they make a lot of money at it. There's a slide later on, but you can make $65,000 US per month, not per year, per month, as a startup hacker. So I would not suggest doing this because here you get caught, and there are rules against this stuff. But there are lots of places in the world where the consequences of doing this are not nearly as strict or of a big deal as they are here. So there are places in the world where people can do this and they basically don't have any consequences. That's slowly starting to change, but it's hard to find these people. And so it's very different than your typical crime, because the perpetrators of the crime are very difficult to find. So human error is responsible for 90%. So they trick you, and we all think that it's going to be stupid people. I'm never going to fall for that. I'm not that dumb. The thing is that these people, as much time as we spend in our work and trying to make the world a better place, they spend in trying to trick you. So it is very specific, very engineered, researched. They've gotten much, much better at it. You are not stupid if you fall for it. Everyone falls for it. It's not a question of if. We are not in a position to prevent attacks anymore. You will not prevent an attack. You will be hacked, 100% guaranteed. It's a question of when it happens and how bad it's going to be. So there's just too much now. It is so overwhelming, the amount of stuff going on. There is no way to prevent from being attacked or hacked right now. People will get in. So yeah, ransomware is still the number one thing. And there's double extortion is another term I heard, where it used to be that they would take your data, encrypt it, and go, give us money to give you back your data. And you would say, I got a backup, go away. I don't need, just forget it. I'll just delete your stuff and I'll restore my backup and I'm good. But now they threaten to release the data. So what can they do with that data? And what sort of reputational damage can be inflicted upon your organization or upon you because you are the source of this? It's unfortunate, but because it's so hard to find the perpetrators, we blame the victims. Like, imagine if this was, you were walking you were walking home after going out with friends after work. It's late, it's dark, and you got mugged. Would the questions we would be asking are, why were you in that part of town? Why were you wearing such a thing? Why didn't you have defensive weapons on you? Why didn't you, think about taking a different route home? Why didn't you, these are the kinds of things we're talking about, right? Like, you are the victim in this case. And unfortunately, the attackers are nowhere to be found, right? Like, really, we should be talking about how to get the attackers and how to, and there are people doing this. The Revel gang, which was based out of Russia, has been split apart, and details are scarce, but it was probably the U.S. government that did that. But like, those people didn't suddenly go away, right? I mean, it was a massive organization, and they were well organized, well funded, and to do this well does require massive organization and funding, and so. But at the same time, it's like they have motivation to do this and to keep going, because we had one that was, it's an example of a real attack that happened just outside Winnipeg. It was a financial company. They were 30 some odd users, and ransomware got in. They told the hackers to go away, and the hackers did not leave them alone. They called in a bomb threat on the building. They were harassing people on their personal cell phones. They called people's family members. They would not leave the company alone. They really were disrupting business. I mean, again, they called in a bomb threat on the building, right? They had to evacuate the building. SWAT showed up. It was a really big deal. It was a massive interruption to business. And again, they did not need the data. They had a backup. They were up and running. They recovered. They did not need the data. What had happened is that the hackers had paid for access, right? So they are a large organization, and they had paid probably a significant sum of money to get access. So one set of hackers found a way in, sat in this environment, and then sold access to the environment to someone else. So if they paid for it, they had real motivation to get their money back, at least, right? So even though the people were well prepared and had the backup and told them to go away, it was this double extortion where they threatened to release, and then, if you say, okay, I don't care, release the information, right? They will still harass, and they will still keep going, and they will not leave you alone. Insurance company ended up paying $280,000 in ransom in that case. They asked for $800 initially, they negotiated down to $280,000 in the end. And again, this is a situation where they did not need any data from the hackers. They didn't care. They told the hackers to go away, and they still disrupted the business enough that they had to pay them to go away. So, there are threats attacking your network right now. It's being scanned on a minute-by-minute basis, and they're looking for easy ways to get in, right? So layered security and defense in depth, essentially what it is let's picture a building with a bunch of doors and windows, and we're going to put an alarm system to lock the doors and windows, and the alarm system, the alarm system locks the doors and windows, or maybe the key card system, whatever, and then the alarm system monitors if there's a broken window or an open door or a motion sensor, etc., right? We're going to, in this warehouse or in this house, there are rooms. So if you break into one room, there should be an interior locked door to get to the next room, to get out to the hallway, right? And then once you're in the hallway, you would need to then break a third door in order to get into another room. And if you wanted to get into a third room, you would then need to break into another door. That's what layered security is at a high level. It's that traditionally, once you're in, and you have access to everything. And you can access the phone system, you can access the server, you can access the software, you can access the, once you're in, you're authenticated and you're good. This layered security approach, also called zero trust, the concepts sort of overlap, where you need to keep authenticating for various things. And so that goes along this sort of spectrum of like how annoying security is versus the need to do it, right? I mean, the most secure thing, which is the super annoying one, is turn off your computer and use paper, right? Like, so obviously we can't do that, but that's the one extreme, and the other extreme is just everything open and I don't care and we'll get hacked. But so something in between is anything we do for security is going to be some layer of inconvenience, so that we can trade it off for being secure. And so we have that's the whole challenge here, is what level of inconvenience can we tolerate? How can we make it easier or easy? So yeah. So multiple and then layers. Slight nuance difference between defense in depth and layered security. You don't need to know the details of this, but the idea is that you need to do. I have a lot of slides, so we'll go through them quickly. So you don't need to take notes or anything. What I want you to get out of this is that every little thing that you do for security is important. So prevention, detection, response. So we tend to focus so much on prevention, right? What can we do? And antivirus and firewalls and all that sort of stuff, and backups, that sort of thing. We tend not to focus on the other two, and we're missing the boat if we're only focusing on the prevention bit. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. You should try to prevent it. The reality, though, is there is we are being overrun. You cannot possibly prevent all of it. You will not prevent all of it. You will get hacked for sure. So we should put some of our efforts, a decent amount of effort, into detection and response, so that we can figure out when a hack has happened, and then what do we do about it. And they're not straightforward. The average dwell time, that's what they call it, the time that a hacker is in a system, I mean, this is across everywhere, but it's 228 days.
Good Lord.
So 228 days. That's a really long time where they could be in your system now and watching and looking at emails, learning where are your backups, how are you storing things, what are your patterns, how often do you switch them, who logs in, who does what in the company, right? There are a bunch of things that happen financially. Again, they want money. There are a bunch of things that happen financially on a monthly basis, right? If they are in for 6 months, they can see a pattern of, oh, well, this is when the large transactions take place. This is who does those large transactions. This is who authorizes those large transactions. How much money are we likely to get? If they attack too fast, they might just, get your $10,000 transfer and get you to give that up. When there's a $100,000 transfer on the 17th of the month that happens, but they attacked too early and they didn't catch that. So these people are very smart, and they hide in plain sight, watching and looking and waiting for their perfect opportunity. So the level of money that they're going after now, because it used to be that they got in and they attacked, and you would get 20,000 spam messages that day, and you knew that you were hit an hour ago, and you're getting all these bounce backs right now because they use it to spend spam, and that's the way they make money, is because they use your legitimate server to send out a billion spam messages. You get bounce backs, and then you've been hacked. So, the dwell time was an hour. Now they figured out that if they dwell a lot longer, they can milk a lot more juice from that fruit, which is you. So instead of using you to send out spam messages and hoping someone clicks on a Viagra email, they can get money out of you, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars we're talking about for small businesses, right? Like it was down from $800,000 to $280,000 for a 30-person business, right? Think about your business and scale that to where you guys are. How much would that be, right? What kind of data do you have on your customers? Do you have personal data? Do you have social insurance numbers? Do you have mortgage documents? Do you have bank account numbers? Do you have asset information? Do you have family information? Do you have wills? Do you have drawings for things, for buildings? Do you who would be upset if that information were out in the public? How would that affect your relationship and the trust that your customers place in you? So this detection and response piece is we don't focus enough on that. We focus too much on prevention. So what are we going to do when this actually happens? And then you can do tabletop exercises to simulate this, right? You can do one just on the back of a napkin, thinking about it on their commute or your drive to work or something. It's like, okay, what would I do if I got hacked, and what are the options? But there's tabletop exercises where you get a team together and you simulate, and it's a day-long thing, and it is something we can do with you, and it's a billable item, but it's to practice this, right? So getting your law firm involved and getting the insurance company involved, and it's costly. You have to pay those people's time to come in, and then everybody sits in the boardroom for a day or on Zoom or whatever, and you go through what's the press release that you're going to say, right? And but it is a worthwhile exercise to go through that and the different kinds of attacks that can be there. So 228 days is the average time that a hacker will sit in there. Average time to contain a breach was 80 days. You'd think you'd be over it in a couple of weeks. You're not. Insurance and forensics, it takes a very long time to do this stuff. So part of the response is, how are we going to operate here? And when you do those tabletop exercises, you find out interesting things, like the insurance company requires full access to all of your information, and they're going to lock it, and you can't have it. So they'll take your OneDrive or your SharePoint or your server or your Google Drive, and they say, we will not allow any changes to this. We need it for forensics. And then you say to them, yeah, but how am I going to operate? They say, sorry, tough luck. We are in it for ourselves because we need to cover ourselves here, because we're looking at how much the payout is going to be, and we think it's significant here. So we're going to lock this down, and I don't care if you can operate or not. It doesn't matter, because at that point they are looking out for themselves, not for you. So we've seen that happen, and the insurance company, bless their hearts, they are not out to for the best for you. They are at that point looking after their losses and to mitigate their damages, because they know that they're in for potentially paying a lot of money. So they bring in the law firm, they bring in the forensics, their own, they bring in the negotiator who talks to, right? So IT, us, and the customer are almost hands off at that point. They run the show. So part of this is, how can you run if that happens? Like, we are talking worst case scenario. So when we look at prevention and detection, part of the detection piece is running a SIEM log server so you can see what happened. Because if you can see what happened and you have a trace and logs, because any hacker worth their salt is going to try to erase those logs, right? So you need some other place, right? If you're just relying on Office 365 logs, well, if they get global administrator access to 365 logs, the first thing they're going to do is delete. I mean, if they don't, they're idiots, right? They will delete the logs. So you won't have a record. And as far as the insurance company is concerned, right? And I'm not vilifying the insurance companies. It's a legitimate business and they're providing a service, but we should go into it with eyes open, because we do need cyber insurance. It's absolutely necessary. If you don't have it today, that's like not wearing a seatbelt. Like, absolutely go and get it immediately. But it's not the be-all end-all. Getting cyber insurance is one piece of the puzzle, and there's many, many other pieces, and we should know what we're getting into, and that they're not going to necessarily be the savior of everything, right? It may mean that they pay the $280,000 instead of us. Okay, yep. I mean, that's definitely a bonus, because I didn't have to pay that. That's good. But they might have some strings attached to that. Like, you can't access your data for 80 days while they figure their stuff out, right? And they trace what's going on. So how are you going to operate for nearly 3 months without access to customer data, right? Maybe there's some nuances there, right? But things like having a log server where you take this stuff off site and you store the logs, now you can prove what happened. So you have an exact trail, hopefully. You never know what you don't know. But there's a trail of what happened. And so if you can prove what happened, and their forensic people can, because the data is there, prove what happened, then the response is a measured response that they only got into these 2 accounts and they accessed these 25 files. Okay. If we don't have that, we have to assume they got into every single account because they were global administrators, and they got into every single file because they were global administrators, or they hacked in as a global administrator. That's a whole heck of a lot worse. That's rebuilding all the machines and all the accounts and all the software and everything for the whole company, right? If you can prove that they got into 2 accounts and accessed 25 files, you've mitigated the response, because you don't need to respond in that crazy way of deleting everything and redoing it all and just in case, because we don't know, right? So you get a much better, quicker resolution because you've had the logs. So again, that's an example of the detection piece and then how it goes into the response piece. But it's not necessarily straightforward that and the response, there is a real push to go fast. Well, how soon can we be up and running? We're down. At that point, you really have to temper expectations, because if you go in guns blazing and restore everything and get back up and running, the insurance company will be really upset because you've deleted any evidence of stuff, and they may deny the claim at that point because you've harmed, or what's the wording, you've made it much more difficult for them and probably increased their liability because you destroyed a bunch of evidence because you wanted to be up and running so fast. So it's totally understandable to be up and running, and we need to be up and running. I get it. But in the long term, that could cause real damage and real financial, bigger financial losses to the company. Like if the insurance then denies the claim because you got in the way and you didn't let them do their thing because you ran in guns blazing and restored stuff, right? So we really have to be, so things like do not reboot the computer, take it offline, right? So take it off the internet, but don't reboot or restart the computer, because there might be things in RAM, in memory, that if you restart the computer will be lost. So if you take it off the internet, then the hackers no longer have access to it because they're of course not physically in your office. If they are, that's a different story. We'll talk about physical security, but the response is important to measure and to be very careful of, because there are things that you just want to go and restore. We have a backup, let's restore it. No, that's actually the wrong thing to do and will cause problems. So 7 layers of security. We'll go through these quickly. So information security policies. So this is, a lot of this that we forget is the human side of things, right? Computers would be fine if humans would use them, right? It's not the computers that are the problem. It's the PEBCAC problem exists between keyboard and computer, or between, seat and keyboard or something. Oh yeah, sorry. It's the humans. I am the problem. We are the problem. It's not the computer, right? So if we give the computer to, our kids to be able to play games on at the cottage, and they get into stuff, and, I have 2 kids. I am not blaming the kids. They're fine. It's not their fault, right? But they get into games and they can click on ads, and then one thing leads to another, and suddenly there's a bunch of pop-ups on the computer and some new screensaver thing is running, and they downloaded a smiley face app and a, that sort of stuff, right? It can be so innocent, and so do you have policies in place that, and we'll talk about CIS and NIST standards too, but do you have policies in place that tell people what the company's expectations are of them? Are they allowed to have the kids watch Netflix on the company laptop on the way up to the cottage or on the airplane, or that sort of thing? And I'm not saying it's not okay. I'm just saying you should think about it, and have some kind of communicated policy for that sort of stuff. And that's just one example, but there's a whole bunch. And the NIST and CIS standards, almost 40% of the stuff is policy stuff. It's you'd think it's all password complexity and two-factor authentication, and that stuff is all in there. But really, 40% of it is do you have a document that people sign that says they will abide by these rules? And have you communicated that to them that they need to abide by these rules? Physical security measures. So, this also goes to probably shouldn't leave your laptop on the passenger seat when you go in for dinner to the restaurant. Put it in the trunk, or hide it, or bring it with you, or something like that. Right? Is Kensington locks if you need to for laptops, and physically locking them up. Most people have physical security. Have you thought of cameras? Do you need cameras? Access cards, that sort of stuff. So physical security, alarm systems, that sort of thing. This tends to be a little bit less of an issue because you're, if someone's going to target you, because we think of this as sometimes targeted attacks. Well, I don't have, come on, I'm not that big of an organization. I'm not that important. I don't hold, state secrets or something. Just come on. I'm not really a target. This doesn't really apply to me. Well, there's a stat later on about industries and stuff, and it's broad. It's right across the industries because they're not specifically targeting. If they are targeting, you and I don't stand a chance, right? These people have so many resources, and who's targeting you, right? It's not going to be Joe Blow in their basement that's targeting you. It's going to be a state or some massive organization that has way more resources than you and I do. If you're targeted, you're screwed anyways, right? That isn't who we're protecting against. We're protecting against the blanket attacks where they send 1 million emails out and a few lucky people click on them, right? And again, I said it's not the stupid people that click on them. These are designed that way. A certain percentage of people click on them, so you're not stupid when you click on them. And I want to create a culture in your company and in our company where if you click on it, that someone's not embarrassed to say, whoops, I think I clicked on something bad. Can we look at this? Because if the person's embarrassed to say that, it will be worse, right? It will be longer before you figure out that something bad has happened, and the damage will be worse. It's way better if the person stands up and goes, I don't know, I think I might have done something. I'm not sure. Let's take a look, right? And they shouldn't be punished for doing that because it isn't them making a mistake. Right? Obviously they wish they wouldn't have done it. You wish they wouldn't have done it and clicked on it, etc. But it's not because they're stupid or these are professionals that do this. So it's really, really important that we create a culture where someone is willing to step forward and doesn't think that they're going to get canned because they step forward to say something. The physical security piece. Where do you store the laptops? Where do you keep them? Do you talk? Is there a policy for this? Do you talk about it? Is there, do people keep their laptops in a secure place? That sort of thing, right? So network security, this is an obvious one. Vulnerability scans, firewalls, antivirus. Do you have passwords for things? Does everyone in your organization have access to everything? Is everyone a global administrator? So the concept of least privilege and permissions. Vulnerability scanning. So this is patches, right? So software is by its nature insecure, and so it needs to be patched. And so what vulnerabilities exist in the system, Windows, Adobe, whatever software you're running has updates associated with it. Those updates need to be applied and put in so that known, WordPress and websites is a one that affects everyone, right? So when is the last time your website was updated? Now, I don't mean a pretty look for marketing. That's separate, right? That's lead generation, definitely important. But when was the last time somebody went and updated the WordPress plugins, right? If you don't know, somebody should be looking at that. I would say at least quarterly, because WordPress is, the most popular web platform. Probably half the people on this call have WordPress sites. So when is the last time the plugins on WordPress? Because I guarantee if you go into your WordPress, there are updates there. If you haven't been in a while, there are updates there that can be applied, and it's not complicated to do, and it's not. It does need a web designer just in case it screws up you have three things scrolling across the top that are cool menu options or whatever. It does need a web designer to do it, but it won't be terribly expensive, but it's important. So there are vulnerabilities that come out in WordPress, and then they patch them. So you need to apply those patches, right? So we think about it for computers and Windows and that kind of thing, and we manage it for software on your PC. The website piece is an important one to consider. Strong identity management. So who's got a password that's ABC123? We are human. We use the same password. Or, let me guess, you put an exclamation mark at the end. Or you turned an A into an @ symbol. Or you capitalized the first letter and added 123 at the end. You used someone's birthday or a cat's name, right? Any of those things, I just listed those. The hackers have figured that stuff out, right? So you use that same password on some delivery app that you got, a couple weeks ago or last month or something, or even 2 years ago. You've completely forgotten it. And then that delivery app gets hacked, and that password is out there and then is sold. And again, these are very sophisticated organizations. They'll take those databases, one from the delivery app, one from the library they hacked, one from the magazine subscription place they hacked, one from Netflix, one from LinkedIn 5 years ago, one from whatever. They take those, combine the data, because your email address is likely the same, or one of a few. They combine those and go, okay, so here's 3 possible passwords for Nancy, right? If I feed 3 possible passwords into a password guessing algorithm, it's going to be way better. Like normally, okay, it'll take 20 years to guess that password. I give it 3 possible passwords that I know have worked on LinkedIn and Netflix and the delivery app and the whatever. 15 minutes it'll spit out the password. It'll try, and then it'll take that and try it on Office 365, and it'll try it on Amazon, and it'll try it on wherever else. And then eventually, like not that long, like really like 15 minutes, it'll spit out what the password is for that, right? And then they'll get hits. And it's a bot that does it. So it isn't, oh, well, I'm not a target because I don't have anything. Yeah, you're right. You're not that important. They're not, again, if they're targeting you, you're screwed. So it's not that they're targeting you. It's that you're just on a list of, 100,000 names or 500,000 names they got from some database that was sold online. And the bot is just going through the list. So you're just randomly on the list. And then, they combine them and they've got 3 possible passwords for you. And you might have changed your password since then, sure, but they still have 3 possible passwords, and you added a 1, 2, 3 or capital or exclamation mark or whatever at the end, and now they can guess the other ones. And then, that's how they do it. So then they get access to it, and then they sell that access, right? And someone else pays for the access. So yeah, having a complicated, long, unique password. So complicated, we talked about that. That we've all known to make it add weird symbols and stuff. Unique, right? How do you make a unique password for every single thing? I got 200 passwords I got to remember. So you use a password manager, right? So LastPass or Keeper or whatever. There's a million password managers, but use one. Chrome is a step up from keeping it in Excel or Notepad. Chrome is fine, but there is no such thing as secure. There is more secure. A password manager like LastPass or Keeper or Bitwarden. There's a bunch. Those are a step up. because they encrypt them and they can't. So if I run a piece of software on your computer, I can pull every single password from Chrome and I can see it. And so if I can do that, the hackers can do that. So Chrome is awesome. And again, they provide, Google's not a password manager. They provide the service and it's nice. And it definitely is more secure than just, well, I use the same password everywhere so that I can remember it. Well, no, the Chrome one is way better than that. And the Chrome one is way better than keeping in Excel, right? So it's not like, oh, well, how come Google's not doing this? I mean, how much did I pay for Chrome, right? Chrome is free. So, and I understand they take your information and if there's an exchange there, I get it. So I'm not saying Google's a saint and I'm not saying Google's a sinner. I'm saying they provide a service that is remembering your passwords for you, and it's way better than doing nothing. But there are even better options out there. Of course, they're paid, right? So a password manager is a way to keep a complex, long, unique password. And each of those things, complex, long, and unique. So long is it's harder to guess if it's longer. 6 characters is way easier to guess than if it's 25 characters, right? So if it's a long, complex, unique password, then how do you do that? Well, password protection, right? So backups, sorry, I went ahead on this slide, but yeah, backups are really important, obviously. Testing backups, separating backups. This is on every insurance application. I filled one out last night for a customer. Separate the backups. What do I mean by that? So if I can go to a yellow folder, just Windows Explorer on your server or on OneDrive or wherever, and I can go into the backup and I can browse the backup, that's not a backup. Because a hacker can, once they get into your system, will then also be able to see the backup. So, okay, it's a copy of your data, which if someone accidentally deletes something on your staff, you can go to the backup copy and bring back that data. So in that sense, it's useful. But if I can actually just browse it, the hacker can too, which means they will delete it or encrypt it or whatever, so it's useless to you in a hack. So it should be completely offline, separated from, I cannot get to it from here. I have to do XYZ steps. So the backup starts, it does XYZ steps, connects, sends the data, encrypts, whatever it's going to do, and then at the end it stops that connection and you no longer have access to see those backups. So during the actual backup it's sending the data, but even then you shouldn't be able to browse. It's like sending it to somewhere else using this special pipeline that's not standard Windows, it's proprietary to the backup system, yada yada yada, separated. Because if they're not separated, it doesn't count. And then monitoring. So this comes in like a million different forms, but the logging, the antivirus, the anti-spyware, you can send the data to Sophos calls it MTR. You send it to the Security Operations Center, the SOC. Holy cow, IT is full of acronyms. But yeah, you send it off to the Security Operations Center and they look at, oh, okay, so here's what's happening in Mississauga, and here's what's happening in Europe, and here's what's happening in Africa, and we can use humans, because a lot of the monitoring is automated. So the Security Operations Center is actually humans looking at it and saying, wait a second, I see some patterns here on what's going on in different parts of the world. This is a new type of hack. Here's how we can respond. And so yeah, the monitoring, testing backups, vulnerability testing, penetration testing. Yeah, so this is that. Yeah, they're in there for 228 days before you notice. So figuring out a little sooner than 228 days puts us in a better position, right? And do you have to be the most secure Fort Knox on the planet? The way this is happening is that they're looking at a list of 100,000 people and they're going through those passwords and logging in, right? They want money. So if you're harder to squeeze money out of than someone else because you've taken a few of these steps, then they'll just go hack someone else, right? If they try to break in and the alarm goes off, right? So I'm thinking of it like an actual burglar in a house, right? The dogs start barking, right? The lights come on and the dogs are barking and the alarm goes. I don't know. I haven't been a burglar, but I think the burglar would leave, right? Like they have a good chance of being caught or discovered or something at that point, or it's at least worse than the place 2 streets down where they left a window unlocked and they don't have the alarm on, right? So we don't necessarily need to be crazy, but we need to do enough as a deterrent and enough that it's difficult for us. So two-factor authentication on email is the low-hanging fruit here. Like if you don't have that for every single email address in your company, like just hang up the call and go do that right now. Right? It's like if you don't have insurance, just hang up. There's nothing more we need to talk about. Just go get insurance. But yeah, the two-factor authentication on the email is, some bot will go and try to guess your password, hit two-factor authentication. It'll return it to the hacker saying, okay, I got 5 hits in the last hour of going through these things. 2 of them have two-factor authentication, 3 of them don't. Which one do you think the hacker's going to start with? They'll start with the 3 that don't have two-factor authentication because they're an easier target and easier, faster money, right? So they'll hack someone else instead of you, right? So, yeah. So comparing it to layers at the airport and all the different things we need to do. So, is there antivirus? Is there anti-malware? Is there a spam filter? Is there a backup? Is there detection? Are you logging things? Is there application whitelisting? Do you have a password manager? All these things we've talked about are, different layers. There's x-rays, there's metal detectors, there's all these things that we really need to do in our business in order to just every day. And this is a constant thing. It's not like we can rest on our laurels here and say we've done a good job, we're done in security, that's it, right? These are just some examples of the Colonial Pipeline. You guys remember that, where in the U.S. on the eastern seaboard there was no gas for a week? They ended up paying $4.4 million there. There was no beef in Alberta and in the U.S. They paid $11 million to get that back. Houston Rockets, basketball team, NBA team. I don't know how much they paid, but they were hit too. So it's profitable. We talked about that. $65K US a month. I mean, I've got a ton of slides here, so we'll go through some of them. But I can pause there. Does anybody have any questions so far about stuff we've talked about?
I just have one question, lest they know this is all about business, but I would imagine we follow the same kind of guidelines or rules for our personal computers.
Absolutely. So again, I would say two-factor authentication is really, really important. And then have some stuff running on your computer. Have a backup. So stuff running on your computer means some sort of decent antivirus. Even Windows Defender that comes with Windows 10 is fine, good enough. Can you get better? Of course you can get better, sure. But do a little bit of each, right? Password manager, right? So LastPass or Keeper or something like that. You can sign up for a family plan and have your whole family be on it for, I think it's like $30 or $50 a year or something. It's not so bad, right? People sometimes ask me about VPNs. NordVPN is doing commercials on TV. Is NordVPN amazing and the best VPN company? I don't know. The VPN is like, when I travel, I will connect to that, and therefore it will encrypt my data, and my data going through the airport Wi-Fi will be encrypted, and people in the airport won't be able to see my data. Yep, that is absolutely true and correct. But the people at NordVPN will be able to see everything. So you better trust NordVPN. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying go in with the eyes open, right? So the people that you're going to use the VPN with should be someone you trust. So do you trust NordVPN? And I'm not saying don't. I'm just, that's the way it is. So you're kind of, there isn't necessarily a simple solution for this, but yeah, two-factor authentication on email for sure. Do that one. Have some software running on the computer. Have a backup, right? So what if in the middle of this call your computer crashed, it was gone, somebody came in the room, took it, and chucked it out the window, and it's gone. It's now in the pool, destroyed. Okay, what would you do? Where's your data? How quickly could you get back? Right? Just think about that. Just right. So, oh shoot, what would I do? Okay, well, I need to get this report out, or this deadline. I have to do this trade by the end of the day, whatever. I'll run to Best Buy and I'll get a machine. Okay, what would I do with that machine? Well, I'd put my email on it. Would it sync? Would it have my latest files? Where are my files? Okay, they're stored online. And like I said, just kind of go through that of what could I do? What would I do in that kind of scenario? So just a couple more slides here. I've got a bunch more, but the Privacy Commissioner of Canada now has rules. It has not been, CAN spam was applied, and somebody did get a massive fine for continually breaking. There's a $100,000 fine for not reporting. I have not heard of a case in Canada where that has been applied to anyone yet. But it is actually the law that if you experience a data breach in your company and you do not report it according to the standards, then there's a $100,000 fine. Again, I have not seen that actually applied. I think it's at this point much more of a please be compliant, and it's a deterrent. So what does that mean? There's a 12 or 15 point checklist, which they talk about what is so what is a breach. There's a definition, the real risk of significant harm. So if a hacker got that data, what could they do with it? I was on a call earlier today where we were talking about, well, the data they have from people in a particular province, name, phone number, address, postal code. Well, that I could Google about somebody, right? So that actually isn't private information, right? Well, they might actually have, a bill, a utility bill, a picture of a utility bill. Well, that isn't something I could Google. And that is something that I could use to potentially open a credit card in someone's name, right? So what harm? So the assessment of whether you need to tell the Privacy Commissioner of Canada is what could they do with that information? If I can Google the information that has leaked out, then you likely, there's a bunch of things on the checklist, and it's on the Privacy Commissioner of Canada's website, but likely you don't need to report at that point because it's public information. It's available on the internet to anyone. So the fact that it leaked from your organization is not really relevant, or it's not important. It's not worse because it came from you. If, on the other hand, it is private information, health information, financial information, etc., that is leaked, then you do need to let those people know, right? And then the question is, how do you let them know? What is the cost of that? Insurance can cover some of that, etc. So the probability that the information will be misused or could be used for bad things. So, yeah, I think let's leave it there. I've got a whole bunch of slides of other sort of statistics, and we can, it's bad. There's lots of stuff here, but suffice it to say that it is across all industries. You are a target. You will get hacked. It's not that you don't have important information that people want. You can see the percentages there. It's across everywhere. Everyone is being hit. This is the number of people that's seen an increase by country. Everyone has seen an increase. Israel has seen the most increase, but it's growing and growing and growing, and it's only getting worse, and there is no end in sight. Three different pieces of the triangle. We often forget the human stuff. We talked about the human stuff, but yeah, the layered security approach, meaning multiple things. It's not just one bolt-on thing. So yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. If not, I think we'll leave it there. So, thank you for coming. Hopefully that was useful. A little scary, but enough to take action. Yeah, start with two-factor authentication, insurance, and then go up from there. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.